So good morning, everybody, or good evening if you are in a different time zone, or good afternoon. Last time we started on a discussion about the dichotomy between the faith and reason, and we looked at various aspects. So like last session, we'll today first start with a small prayer, then a little bit of introspection about gratitude, and then we'll get into the main topic. So for the prayer, let me share the screen and we'll just do with that. Are you all able to see the screen with the prayer on it? All right. Thank you. So we'll recite it 3 times. Most of us are familiar with it. It's basically a refuge prayer, and we bring to our mind the 6 paramitas, although this prayer mentions the practice of giving the first paramita as a symbol for others. And a commitment to become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So we'll do it 3 times with as much mindfulness as we can muster within our minds. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Last time, some of us were here, and if you recall, we discussed, we talked about how, recalling the gratitude, recalling the good things that we have done to others can help us reinforce that feeling or that commitment. And we kind of talked about some people's experience and my own experience of doing good to others. And we kind of discussed that recalling those feeling kind of good or happy while helping others does help us reinforce our kind of mental inclination to do that further in future again. Today we'll take the kind of opposite side of it, and we'll work through recalling when others have been kind to us. And like last time, I invite people to share some stories if they have of experiencing that kindness from others, which helped us in some way or the other. Right? Anybody? Anybody would like to share? It doesn't have to be big glamorous thing. Just day-to-day thing is fine too. It doesn't have to be somebody saved my life or some big event or something. Just somebody offering a cookie is good too. Anything. Hello. Anybody? Yeah, please.
Recently, I was in Assam for a conference, and then so I lost my way because I was new in the Don Bosco University. There were many fake leaders were there, and all of a sudden, when I was lost, it's an elephant corridor, like there is an elephant.
Right, right, right.
And it was night, and I had no way to go inside. And the students, when they saw me, they helped me, like they gave their own scooty to me. They said, "Yashwali, you can go. We'll manage it." So I think that act of kindness, giving their scooty to me to travel. So I think that touched my heart. So it's very appreciative.
Oh, very good. We are just trying to kind of engage in a discussion where we recall other people being kind to us. And yeah, so he just shared. Do you have anything to share?
Uh, yes, uh, recently I was in Russia
Okay.
and I was through Government of India. So we were like group of 400 people from government, from the different institutions like ISRO, IIT Delhi, IIMS, and all
Mhm.
of the experience. And we were participating in one of the event over there, World Youth Festival. I was representing our country. So the act of goodwill and help, I felt that I mean like what we see in the news about people over there, but people were really, really extremely kind. Like I recall one incident where I was in Sochi, one of the coastal city over there,
Hmm.
and I had to book a cab, but I was not having a local Russian app, and I
Right,
was
right.
trying to reach out some way, just giving my hand,
Mhm, mhm.
holding
Sign language, yeah.
sign language, but in India.
Yeah.
And then one Russian girl came and we have a group of like 10 people. And then she asked where we are from. I thought we are from India. And then what she did, like she booked the cab and then she took my number and she waited there like till everyone was in cab in three different cab.
Wow.
Then she called me after half an hour and asked her whether we have reached safely to the hotel or not.
That's great.
So that was
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Jitendra ji, you were very vocal last time. Why don't you share something?
Yeah, the recent incident was about a couple of weeks ago. We visited the temple in Delhi, and so there are lots of kind people out there. Quite a few kind people. They will go out the way, without any, returns or anything. And because my wife, she's disabled, she's a wheelchair dependent, and so I was struggling to get her out of the car, and even though we had this helper in the car, so we were just struggling. So the car park attendant, he brought somebody else in to look up the car, and he came and actually physically helping us to actually put my wife in the wheelchair and drag, or not drag, but it's a push the wheelchair to the temple and says that you um, and take you around wherever you need to. Where he wasn't sort of his job, but he was just a car park attendant. But he took us there, and on a wheelchair, he pushed the wheelchair. He showed us around all these different the parts of the temple. Even though he was involved as you can have a prayer here, you can have another whatever you want to do. So that I found very moving in a way, that this person, this guy, went out of his way to help us, and not even his job, but he. So I was thinking on the way back that how can I repay this back to this guy in some ways. So I felt like what he did was uh, remarkable.
Yeah, true.
It's something not everyone can do this kind of stuff, that to leave his own work behind and go all the way and help somebody, don't not even his job. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So nice, right?
It felt very moving.
Anybody else? I see Bhavani ji. She's an old friend. Bhavani ji, I'm sure you have tons of these to share with us.
Yeah, hello, Lokesh. I just saw the invite and I was very happy to join. I may not be. I have to be in and out because I have other commitments. But I'm here when you ask this question. So I want to say I'm very grateful to the little acts of kindness that my husband Prakash shows me every day. Like he makes sure that I have my vitamin supplements and my medicines, which I forget when I get so busy with work and other things. So when I'm busy looking after others, he's also takes care that I take care of myself.
Great, great. Now, Bhavani, you are touching the kind of message that I wanted to deliver today. So thank you for bringing it up. But is there somebody else who
Thank you, Lokesh.
want to share? Yeah, I'll share too. I am so well taken care of on a day-to-day basis. I'm like really spoiled. You won't believe how spoiled I am actually. So breakfast, lunches, dinner, all are served without me ever interfering in the kitchen. I am driven around in a decent car by a decent person here and there. People talk nicely to me. I eat good food most of the times, at least. And for all of these, I can't count how grateful I am. I guess if we start to look at, um, of course, these incidents, like some of you shared, individual incidents of past 1 week or past 1 year, something where you really felt it on that spot, right? But if you look at it, really look at it, there are acts of kindness that we kind of enjoy, partake, probably every moment, every second, probably 10 times in a day, probably 100 times a day. We just need to kind of start looking at things that way, I guess. Sometimes coming from a very competitive kind of living life, a corporate life, or in our day-to-day struggles also, we find it hard to kind of see kindness. I'll give you an example, right? Let's say I go to a restaurant and I order food and I get food and I pay for it. Some of us would think that because it's a transaction, it doesn't need that kind of a feeling of gratitude toward the restaurant owner or the cook or the server who served on the table, right? Because I paid for it, right? I mean, okay, so it cancels out, sort of, right? There are many things which we think that cancel out and hence feel that there is no gratitude required for it. At least in my experience, I feel that, oh, why the hell should I kind of, feel that way about the restaurant? In fact, it was a expensive restaurant, and in fact, the food was not that tasty actually. So why should I, right? Things like that. So this canceling out is a kind of at least for me, is a big hurdle in feeling gratitude toward people. Things don't really cancel out like that. The mutual acts of course, when we paid the bill at the restaurant, it somehow helped it to survive, to pay the wages to the cook and the server, and the owner was able to sustain that business, and that's how it's a reciprocal act of kindness, maybe. But do these cancel out? I think not. I think not. In fact, they reinforce each other. And even if we are paying back in some way or the other, uh, the act of kindness still remains. So anybody who's giving us food, whether paid or unpaid, out of kindness or out of commercial interest, we should still be feeling, I think, gratitude toward them because it sustained us, regardless of whether we are paid or not paid for it, right? Similarly, I mean, our houses are built by somebody. When you're driving on the road is built by somebody. The car is built by somebody. The computer that is enabling us to talk to each other right now is also built by somebody. And all these people, if you find in ourselves to feel gratitude, I think there are kind of infinite ways to feel gratitude toward everybody, toward everything that we experience on a moment to moment basis. So we don't really need to look at individual incidents in the past. We just need to look around and find probably 100 of those things to be grateful about. And I guess that kind of feeling of gratitude forms and informs bodhicitta at multiple levels. And it forms a warmth in our minds and hearts to engage in a practice in a more meaningful way. I believe so, at least. So thank you for sharing your experiences. And I'll talk about sutra later in today's talk, where we'll see, hopefully, that that kind of attitude can further lead to experiencing the world in a way where kind of we feel happy about things, even though circumstances might not allow for it. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Now we'll get into the main topic. In last session, what we did was to kind of first we looked at this. If you're able to see the screen, we looked at this Sutra of Tenseri, a quotation from there. And because the topic was reason versus faith, I thought it was a very appropriate sutra to understand. And just to recap, we talked about how not merely out of reverence, but based on the examining of the words of Buddha is the way to develop a stable and deeper understanding of his teachings. And that's what the message it gave. Merely out of reverence referred to having a kind of a faith which is not based on reason, but examining the words refers to actually checking those words. And we talked about how in the history of Buddhism and Indian philosophical traditions, actually the words of Buddha were checked by other traditions, and a very constructive philosophical dialogue continued for over 1,000 years, and everybody gained from it. If you study Indian philosophy in a more organized way, not just in the Buddhist context, but in the Hindus and Jainas and other traditions context, you'll understand that although positions are different, sometimes very different, sometimes slightly different, they all kind of learned from each other to derive their sophistications. So that's how Buddha's words were also examined. And the Nalanda masters, beginning with Arya Nagarjuna, down to the 10th century biggest masters who took this dharma to Tibet. All of that is basically an examining and reaffirming the validity of the words through reason and logic, right? So that was something that we discussed. And then we kind of, today I have put in more text into it, but we kind of discussed what faith or beliefs mean to us in a kind of, if we are not exposed to any philosophy, what would that mean to us? Or what would reason mean to us, right? And based on what we discussed last time, I tried to put in some bubbles or clouds there. And let's see if you agree with them, or I'm happy to modify them, change them the way you feel. But the kind of dichotomy of it is very clear. Somebody who's not from a dharma background would definitely get confused about, whether it is kind of faith, kind of religious or blind or prescriptive in nature, or it is depends on a person. We don't know whether it's valid or not. It's my belief versus yours. It's my teacher versus yours. Those kind of a subjectivity angle to a faith, right? Whereas for reason, we think that it is more scientific and more kind of stable, right? And it's a kind of verifiable, like sciences are verifiable. It follows a formal structure, and hence it lends itself to more acceptability toward, for everybody. So nobody doubts 2 + 2 = 4. Nobody questions that, but you would question whether some act is ethical or not, depending on the beliefs that you hold, right? We also talked about how a big question arises when we want to find why we should be good. What makes sense? What derives an ethical behavior? If it is purely faith-based, does it lend itself to a stable kind of an outlook, a stable behavior, or does it changes with situations? And kind of a ethics based on reason, is it more stable, or is it more fundamental inequality, whether it gives us a compass to deal with various situations? Because we can't specify all the situations. We'll have to have a compass, mental compass, to deal with all those situations, right? So anybody who'd like to add or delete or kind of substantiate through the examples what this dichotomy is, right? And that's something that we want to deal with as a beginners of Dharma practice. Is there anybody? Sure.
Sometimes I feel they are complementary, like you have reason, and reason can help you build your faith in something, because the reason is the reason why you're having the faith. So like I'm a person of reason, but I'm now bending towards faith, which earlier I was not. So sometimes they kind of complement, and reason can lead you also to faith. Sometimes faith can lead you to reason, which is also fine.
Right.
But I feel they complement, and they are kind of interdependent on each other.
Very nice. We touched upon that. So today's session is basically we want to develop that further, hopefully. But this requires a lot of participation. Thank you for that. Anything, Anila?
Right, empirical. Or
Mhm.
I would put it on both sides.
Okay.
Just
Great.
because.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's not necessary also that reason would involve empirical, but then that's famous.
But are you able to see a little bit of course, you are a very, very learned Dharma practitioner, but for a person who is just a beginner, do you think there is a real dichotomy between what would a scientific thought or a religious thought? Because faith gets clubbed together with the kind of religious thing also. And then you say reason is more scientific, and then, I want to be more about science, and I don't step aside.
How so I was just thinking how like empirical, even then universal, right? Because say, for example, statistically valid, it's not necessarily unless it's a census unit. So I was thinking more along those lines.
Right.
And then in the Dharma context, I would say, yeah, empirical on this side also, because how it can be so fast.
Sure. Please, yeah.
I think when we talked about the Indic faiths, which is considered to be based out of reasons, because we have a lot of communication back and forth, and we doubt and we ask questions on everything. So that is itself kind of showing that there is a merger, or there is what do you say? It is based out of the reason, and the faith is coming out of it. So that is what I would say. But the recent statement I recall from Elon Musk, he said that religion and faith are distinct; they cannot complement each other. So it depends on what side, like from where we are coming from.
Yeah. I have a slide which shows actually so subjective versus objective, right? So that's one of the kind of main pillars of this distinction. Although we might realize it, but we think that objective, verifiable, this is universal law. I mean, it's not based on my judgment or his view or her view kind of thing, right? So we value that, right? Even in our society, for example, some countries have jury because they don't want the one single judge to make his or her own subjective judgment about the case, right? And here also, even in kind of law, you would say that you want witness when there are two opposing party. You want to verify it by a third person, right? Because that's all based on our desire for a reasoned judgment or behavior, right? And that's not invalid, right? We do want to move away from the whims and fancies of a particular individual or a teacher or a statement and get into something which can be accepted by everybody, which can be universal. And tagged along with that feeling is this concept of objective, that independent of the observer, is there some truth out there which I can hang on to, which I can realize, right? And that is probably what all the Western philosophy and Indian philosophy has struggled for a long time. Even the Greeks, 2,500 years ago, were dealing with the same thing. Indian tradition were dealing with the same thing. And because this want for objective thing is a very confusing thing also, Buddha's message of no objectivity is so much harder to digest. Even in the recent Western philosophy, if you read that, it would be something, people wanting something objective. Otherwise, if I can't verify it, just your opinion against mine, right? And then it just boils down to that, right? And Buddha would skillfully say, no, just hang on. There is another way to look at it. And that's something that we want to explore, right? Even the definition, let me show you a slide where I just cut pasted these definitions from Oxford Dictionary's online version, right? Subjective is almost has a negative connotation if you read this definition. Based on your own ideas or opinions rather than facts, and therefore sometimes unfair. So much of negative bias about subjectivity is built into our language or our thing itself, right? Look at others, right? Existing in someone's mind rather than in the real world, right? Even the examples, people who are less subjectively involved are better judges. You know, the bias is built into our meaning of subjectivity. But look at the objective, right? Not influenced by personal feelings or opinions, considering only facts. All compliments are toward objective side, right? It almost sounds like the dictionary wants to say, okay, be objective and don't be subjective, right? Dictionary itself is giving a value judgment here, right? So that's how it is. And so when Buddha says everything's subjective, it is hard to understand. And that's why I think discussions like this are very helpful.
Even if you look at the modern social sciences and disciplines, humanities, all this, the predominancy of economics and quantitative within that is very much based on this premise that we are objective and all other disciplines are subjective.
Yeah.
And qualitative data is subjective. And therefore, and that is absolutely false, as you say, because even in econometrics, depending on how you run a model, you can get very different results.
Yeah.
So that power and that lies wholly in seeing a discipline as yielding some objective truth.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. So these things, this dichotomy. So His Holiness when he says that we should develop faith based on reasoning, it is hard to understand actually. It sounds like a simple statement, but if you come with our learning, the modern education learning, where in the dictionary we learn the subjective means this and objective means this, and faith kind of is approximately same as subjectivity, whereas the reason is approximately, I'm not saying exactly it's the same thing, approximately same as like being objective about things, then how do you reconcile these issues, right? And I struggled, I mean, coming from modern education and being in kind of engineer and working through a competitive world, I struggled with developing compassion, but I struggled with these things also. How is it that we are using the same word, objective and subjective, but our meaning of it is completely different, right? So how do we how do you live with that, right?
Can I
And
say something here, Alok?
yes, Chitanaji, please.
Yeah, can I say something? I think there's two things here, right? Subjectivity or subjective is not necessarily to be looked into the negative view.
Yep.
You know, it shouldn't be looked into under the light of bias or no bias, anything. Then you can, because faith and belief is very personal. Whatever you believe in, whatever your faith is, you are strongly believe in those things. So therefore, it's not something negative in there, because
Right.
they are getting something positive out of that thing. Maybe peace, maybe something else, maybe they feel more connected with the God, whatever reason is, right? But if you
Yeah.
see the faith in a very subjective way, the subjective way is not necessarily be a negative stance or negative view, then you can move forward from there. So it is not a negative,
Yeah.
right? It is another way of finding what you're looking for in faith.
Right. Right. So
Right.
faith and subjective, it's not completely one-to-one correspondence, I would say, but the kind of associations that it brings to a typical mind is things like this. So that's why I'm kind of vague cloud kind of picturization I'm using. They are not exactly synonymous. Like we talked about last time, these are like probably the same in thesaurus, you'd find them closer associated words rather than exactly the, word meaning equivalents. But I take your point. Yes, faith, because I mentioned here also, it comes from life experiences and basis of spiritual practice for individuals, right? And and this can be specific to individual, which doesn't necessarily mean that it is invalid, right?
Yeah, that's the point. When you have that understanding and you start to believe in those things, then you can find the more peace with these words, subjectivity or subjective or the bias or unbiased or whatever it is. And if you look at the reasoning side of it, and in the reason side of it, if you look at it from scientific view, where you need to be like black and white, like a reasoning and evidence and proof and this and that. So I think we should come away from those things and look at it from different perspective, different angle, things, how, because these things are very, very, very personal. What you getting out on a personal level, following the Buddhism or following whatever you believe in, right?
Yeah.
If we put those scientific facts on one side and look at if you're getting something out of it, that's wonderful. And if you're still caught up in finding what's right and what's wrong and this and that, then you will never find those answers, because there's no answers there. There are no answers there. You might get some window of something, but there's no solid answer there,
Yeah.
right? So something we're looking for maybe not there.
True. I would think personally that looking for that something does have some value, right? And the way, at least in Buddhist traditions, faith is being taught is I think there is a conscious attempt to move away from blind faith. I think that was Buddha's agenda, social agenda also at the times when he was living there. And to posit a kind of a way of living which is in line with the experienced reality,
The thing on
in
top is
line
really
with
not
what
recorded.
leads to, which leads to sorry, Ajit, I
Maybe
need
for
to
you
mute.
it is not required. For me, it is required.
Ajit, sorry, I'm muting you because there was some disturbance. Sorry. So I think the Buddha's agenda was also to kind of deal with some of the blind faith that was prevalent at the time, and give us something to work on in terms of our day-to-day behavior or ethics, which is not based on blind faith but also based on reason and how it could lead to our further happiness and lessening of suffering over time. So it's a kind of a noble task to find a faith which is more stable and justified, right? So that's what I guess His Holiness's intent also is. So what we'll do is I'll look at another sutra and see where that leads us in this subjective versus objective kind of discussion, and see where there is some overlap or there is commonality that we can find a deeper level of it. We have said that reason is stable, right? We have said that it lends itself to validity or universality. But is that only the characteristic of the reason, or there is something that we can derive a conclusion which could look like a Buddhist faith, but which really is not, which could look like a faith, a statement of faith, but which itself is also kind of universal, kind of stable, right? Let's see if we can kind of analyze sutra in that way. So some of you are familiar with this. I'll read it out because it's very nice to read out. The various delightful flowers blossom, and the sparkling supreme golden abode stand, so alluring. For none of these is there a creator. They are posited by the power of thought. It is through conceptualization that the world is imputed. So it is Upali requested sutra. And it says a lot. It says so much. I guess I can spend a lifetime just thinking about it and not be enough. Just read it again, I guess. Sorry, I just love it so much. The various delightful flowers blossom, and the sparkling supreme golden abode stand, so alluring. For none of these is there a creator. They are posited by the power of thought. It is through conceptualization that the world is imputed. This can mean so many things to so many people, right? And I guess so many of learned people are here. I'll invite comments on how they read it, and then I'll share how I read it. And I guess there's no right or wrong way, unless there is some absolutely wrong way. They're approximately all are kind of right, and everybody's own interpretation of it, because it is a very profound statement here. Anybody? Yes, yes.
For me, I think about this verse when I see a beautiful sunset or when I enter a garden with many beautiful flowers. And I think how incredible it is that it all comes from my mind. From the side of the sunset, from the side of the flower.
Yeah.
There something objectively, it's my mind, because nobody else sees the sunset or sees the flowers the way I see it. So beautiful, so maybe people see it in a different way, different colors, depend on the eyes of the people as well. And so yeah, every time I see something that beautiful, it makes me think about that verse in particular. Yeah.
Good, good, good.
You
want to say?
I think power of thought is really, really very important, and it can make or break anything. So we see that, I mean, like people living in the harshest climate or harshest conditions, but still they are so positive and optimistic towards the life. And people are living with all the luxury of the life, all the materialistic things we can think, and they are having, but still they are in pain. So it is about, everything is about our thought, and that really helps us to navigate through all the challenges, and we can see the beauty with our thought, and we can see all the pain with our thought.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Anybody else? Online people?
I also remember once Lama Rinpoche had many beautiful flowers around him, and probably flowers that are not very common because this was in France. So maybe local flowers that had so many different designs. And Rinpoche for half an hour was telling us how incredible that these designs they came from our dharmas.
Yeah, amazing, no? Yeah. Anybody from online?
Yeah, it just has so many layers and layers to it, as you
Yes,
said.
Bhavani. Yeah.
The thing is, even the fact that we're reading this and we're imputing meaning to it, even that is conceptualization. And yeah, I mean, it's quite mind-boggling to think of the implications of that.
Yeah. Anything, Anila? Okay.
I think same as what others have said. I think this verse in particular, this when we see a beautiful reality out there, and you do think very much so that it's coming from the object side. And then to correlate that with this notion that it is 100% subjective or imputed, while being external, while functioning in whatever manner to give pleasure or pain, that is truly quite mind-boggling, and it's hard to get one's mind around.
Yeah.
And of course, even this notion of a creator, that also brings up, I think, a lot of issues when we see a lot of beauty, as Nico's saying, or you out there, you sort of can correlate that perhaps there's a very benevolent creator. But then if you see a lot of suffering and a lot of other situations, you start wondering about that. But in all of this, I think this notion of, thinking that 100% subjectivity and functionality are able to go hand in hand is very, very, very mind-boggling.
True.
Also because of the diversity. Yeah, to add to Nico's point. Even look at this beautiful, beautiful Gompa and look at the diversity of
I know.
elaborations.
You were saying something?
Yeah, I want to just add that sometimes you appreciate beauty, but beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So if you like something beautiful, then you kind of experience it. But now, so I was working and I used to be very busy with work, so I didn't have much time. But after my retirement, I started traveling a bit and going to places. So I was in Nepal last week, and then Goa the week earlier. So I got to,
You're having a ball. You're having a ball. I get it.
So, but now I find that I enjoy sharing that with friends. So like if I have a friends group, our school friends or our college friends, I like to share anything that's beautiful that I experience with them. And I think it's important that whatever you experience, it's important to share, because by sharing it multiplies. It doesn't get divided. The happiness gets multiplied.
Yeah. True.
I just want to add. So
Yes.
I always there is one quotation which I came through like myself. There is a word sword, like SWORD, right? But if you take the word S at the end, it becomes words, WORDS. So when I was reading this, I think when we shift, and S for me stands for shift. So when we shift the focus, when we shift the thoughts, the swords can become words. So I think when I read this thing, so it all depends upon the power of the thought. If you shift one thought to another, so the swords can become words. So that's a reflection which I'm getting from this.
Yeah. So I tend to break it in three parts when I reflect on this. First two lines, right? The various delightful flowers blossom, and the sparkling supreme golden abode stands, so alluring. Now this is Buddha speaking. And you can see the joy coming out of his speech. The word sparkling supreme, alluring, delightful, right? All these are expressions of somebody enjoying something very much, right? So Buddha is having a good time. That's what we are sure here, right? and in sutras we have I think there's several mentions of Buddha saying that, oh, this world is a beautiful place and it's a joy to be living here, and things like that have been mentioned, right? He has achieved a state of happiness that is very, very clear out of these first two lines, right? I don't know whether they were really supreme golden abodes that he was looking at when he was probably somewhere in Bihar or somewhere going there, and probably it was raining most of the times, and he was walking in historical things. You will probably read that going for his sermons, he'd probably walk in half a feet or 1 feet of water, actually battling through it, and going for next village to village to village, right? That's the kind of life he led. And here we see supreme golden abodes, right? So there is a experience that is going through. I don't know whether we should call it a meditative bliss or whether we should call it basically he's looking at the illusionary world as a very peaceful or enjoyable kind of a thing. We don't know. I don't want to speculate on that, but one thing is sure that there is joy in it, that there is a joy being experienced. But next lines kind of are the statements of a metaphysical reality, right? For none of these is there a creator. Now that's a huge statement after saying, oh, I love this flower, right? But we don't usually experience the world that way. We'd say it's beautiful and then we want to grab it, right? Or things like that. An attachment towards something comes along with our liking of those things. Here it is the opposite. He's negating there is a creator. Now, there are two ways of reading it, in my humble opinion. One is in a limited sense of kind of a benevolent creator or a creator God kind of a reading. Second is a much more broader Mahayana kind of a reading where you would say that it is talking about an objective production. That none of these is there a creator, is that none of these are objectively produced. That objective cause is being denied of the production, right? That leads to, I'm not sure where that leads to or whether that's a thesis or the proof. The next statement, they are posited by the power of thought. First two lines say there are things, beautiful things. Second says, but they can't be created. And then how are they? They are posited by the power of thought, right? So assertion of things being there, but not being objectively produced, then hence how are they? They are posited by the power of thought. So a complete reasoning has been built into it, right? And the summary word then, it is through conceptualization that the world is imputed. It is through conceptualization that the world is imputed. So a summary statement. So what is the content? What is the conclusion of this? We would say that it says that everything is subjective, right? Is it the same subjective that we talked about earlier? That it is probably imagined, probably that is something of an individual's capacity or something. I can go back to that page. Is this kind of belief kind of subjective? Do these kind of words come to our mind when we think of subjective in the way Buddha would like us to understand? Right? It's a completely different way of looking at it, right? But even if we say that content matter of this is kind of everything is subjective, what is the nature of these sutra? That's the second question I want to ask. Is a fundamental law being explained? Is something universal being talked about? Although we're saying everything is subjective, that subjectivity itself, that everything is subjective, this fact itself is a universal fact. That fact itself lends itself to our concept of what objective means, a verifiable, kind of a subject to independent judgment, kind of objective fact, right? So here in one clean swipe, we find that everything is subjective. That fact is an objective fact. These two things are kind of talking with each other, not in a contradictory way, but in a very complementary way. And Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul puts it very, very nicely. I don't know whether he's quoting from somebody or whether it's his own, I guess, reflection and conclusion. And I like it so much, I put it here in the next page. The lack of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object, right? This is what we are essentially saying, that the things are subjective is the fundamental nature of everything. That in that meaning of objectivity, things are objective in the sense of not being objective. That's being subjective, right? So here, for ease, lack of objectivity, we can say the subjectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object, kind of a thing, if you want to simplify it. But I don't think we should simplify it like that. But a negation should remain a negation. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I say something here?
Yes, please.
Yeah. It seems to me, I mean, I'm just throwing this question on the to the participant and stuff and thing. It seems like the second part of this sutra, this is the that is leaning onto the emptiness.
Of course.
And this is more to do with the objectivity, and then looked at from the objective point of view, but actually it is like a subjective way of doing things in a way. That's so it's that needs to be a bit more exploring though. Okay, whether it's leaning onto the emptiness way of looking at things, which is the conceptualization of the world is imputed. This is a clear statement of this is something is there, but it's not there in a way.
Yes, it is not just leaning, it is a statement of emptiness. The third line, for none of this is there a creator, is a statement of emptiness. And if you want to interpret the next two lines, they are posited by the power of thought. It is through conceptualization that the world is imputed. These are statements of dependent origination. Right? This is clear that it's not just leaning on that. It is clearly, yeah, yes.
Yeah. And if we look at the from the emptiness, if we explore the emptiness, there's a clear you can get some answers from there, I think.
Yes.
I think and also from a student from language point of view, this is a very symmetrical sutra. Like if I see the third statement, that's like the solution. The first complements the fourth statement. There are various delightful flowers blossom. I think the antidote to that would be, of course, they come from the power of the thoughts, but it increases the intensity, which is the second line that complements the last line, where we're saying that since it's more alluring, it's more sparkling, then the antidote to that should be that it comes from the conceptualization. So I think for me, it's very symmetrical, where the third line kind of divides the first half and the second half, where the first statement complements the fourth, and the second complements the fifth. So in terms of intensity, like how it increases, like I see it that way.
Yeah, I never thought of it this way, but thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Yes.
What the Venerable Musala was sharing about seeing the Gompa, how it has so many beautiful things. Recently, I had different friends come over from different countries, and for example, there is one very elder student who came and she said, so blessed and so many holy objects, and you can feel that so many lamas visited here and so forth. And then more recently, a Russian friend came and said, the center is run down because there are humidity marks there, the electricity units to be run down. It is the same Gompa, right? The basis is the same.
Yeah.
Similarly, I remember when I visited Bodh Gaya the first few times, I was in a pure place, like everything seemed so perfect and harmonious, different traditions practicing together in the same place. For me, this was, wow, it was shining, like sparkling supreme gold.
Right.
Then maybe my fourth visit to Bodh Gaya, and I was walking in the streets with another Russian friend. And she said, it's so dusty and so polluted. And finally, I saw that. So my view of Bagaya has changed a little bit. But it's still the same Bagaya with different people see it.
Exactly,
Subjectively,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Objectively, subjectively.
So no, that piggybacks to our earlier discussion about feeling gratitude, right? If you find reasons to be angry with people, we'll probably find hundreds of reasons to be complaining and angry about stuff. But if you want to find gratitude, we'll probably find 100 ways to feel gratitude, right? It's the same thing. Buddha probably is looking at some fields and some misery there because the world, he's looking at world, and world he himself says is full of misery. He's probably observing it. But what he finds there is this, right? So of course that's a very, very high level, but even in our day-to-day things, I think one of the keys for us to kind of maintain our sanity and balance in this suffering is to find uh, enough reasons and more to feel gratitude toward things. That helps us kind of survive. It's a survival skill, and for lack of a better word, in the misery that will find it's easier to make friends, right? It's easier to connect with people when we show gratitude to them. They will naturally open to us, right? Open up to us, and we'll start to find that there are no real enemies anywhere, right? We'll start to find that that dog who's barking is probably not that aggressive as we think he or she is, right? Just small things. The person who you think was trying to do you harm was just going about his own business. You can think about even a mosquito biting you. He's just going about getting his food, man. He has no intention of hurting you at all. It's like when you go and get some bread, are you hurting somebody? For mosquito, it's the same thing. It's just going, getting his bread, right? And but you will find, and I slam it, right? This guy is intending to harm me. Maybe he has malaria or something like that, right? That guy is just going about doing his own business. So if you start to feel kind of gratitude or start to think about things from other people's perspective, probably it helps in dharma practice to develop, to be a better person, a little more compassionate. And all these little things add up to develop a deeper level of bodhicitta, is that what I believe. Because they create, I think, optimum mental climate for compassion and bodhicitta to be, growing. They are like kind of sun and soil for that bodhicitta to take root and grow. Yeah, just small things, daily practices. Very nice. And someday they will lead to our own experience of sparkling supreme golden abodes, I'm sure.
One other thing, Krishna, that this verse, I think even when we are very, very, say, pleasant feelings arise due to seeing things as objectively wonderful, whether it's a scenery or food or so many things. And I think for a lot of us in the modern world where we also don't have such suffering on a daily basis that is very perceivable, manifest suffering, say, then I think this verse also cuts the attachment part, which is actually as pernicious as even the aversion part, In fact, I feel it's recently, I do think a lot it's much subtler fiction and harder to identify in oneself and others. But definitely that pull is really there, whether to, travel to better or even in the Dharma context, be in nice situations or conducive and all this. And this verse, I think, because the minute you get to these last two lines and the third line as well, then automatically, there's a little bit that sense that, okay, then no matter what I'm seeing, how much pleasant feeling is coming in me and based on my discrimination, and then how I want to, I can sort of maneuver that. Which is a lot of freedom, because I think we are also really driven and conditioned by that also. As you were saying,
True.
And not just material comfort, but generally speaking, all things that we perceive as,
True. Any comments from online people? Pranshuji is here. Hello, Pranshuji.
Like Lokesh, how are you?
Surviving,
Just
sir.
okay. Yeah, everybody is surviving. Yeah, that's how the samsara is. As you said, mosquito doing his wonderful. Like I was just contemplating upon that how this, just this very powerful verse. When I opened this Zoom link and then I saw this verse, very powerful verse. So I think I'm not very sure, but I think Buddha said this was something related to some not in worldly, like the this he's saying somewhere in about the heavens where he's seeing some golden abode, and but I need to check. Like I just remember vaguely I read or I heard it from Geshe-la or I read somewhere that this is about the Devalok or something, where you like golden mansions and all these are there that way. Then he's contemplating upon that. Sanskrit, if I remember correctly, this verse goes like this. Swaranam vimanam jvalanti manogya तेष्वपि कारकु नास्ति कश्चित् तेष्वपि स्थापित kalpavashena. So everything like kalpavash, through the kalpana, through
Power
the
of thought.
imagination. Yeah, power of thought, things are being established. So, yeah, that's what I. Yeah.
It's great you remember it off the top of your head. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pranshuji, we miss your Sanskrit lessons.
Oh.
Anybody else who would like to share? Pranshuji, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think following from what Pranshuji said, one thought came in my mind that yes, then we can create our own heaven and we can create our own hell, because both are posited by the power of thought, right? So how we live in samsara also, the conventional truth is our interpretation of the conventional truth can be heavenly or can be miserable. I may be wrong, but it's just a thought that came to me.
Yeah. No, such a beautiful thought. Thank you, Bhavaniji.
Lokesh, in the Lama, I think there is one part where Lama Tsongkhapa explains how, for us human beings, for example, when we see a lake, we see it as water, and if it's clean, maybe we can drink from it, maybe we can swim in it, maybe we can fish from it, and so on and so forth. But then if you take a hungry ghost, for example, who has a totally different karmic appearance, for him, the water would not be seen as water, but maybe as pus or as urine or whatever. And then if you take somebody who has a life in the God realms, seeing this lake would be like a nectar, something very wow. So this also shows, I think, the lack of objectivity of the objects. No?
Yeah. It when you say this appears, it is not only appearance, it is functioning also. So for a hungry ghost, it would function as pus. For us, it would function as water, like you said, you could drink it. And for devas, it's not just appearance, it's also, it would function in terms of giving that effect of amrit if they need it. I don't know whether they need it or not. I've not checked. But if they need, yes, it functions as amrit. Yeah. That's how it is beautiful. I mean, the functioning part of it, right? While being subjective.
There are many stories of, for example, the Tibetans when they started being invaded by China. And especially, I think, monks or Dharma practitioners who were imprisoned by the Chinese invaders, they thought that if we just, keep our mind that we are in jail under Chinese occupation, we will suffer. So they decided to transform their mind. I'm not in a prison, I'm in a cave. I'm not a prisoner, I'm a meditator. And then they took the best out of the time and they came out of the jail very happy, after meditating for so many years, And these people were, locking us.
Yeah.
They are my servants, they're giving me food,
Yeah.
So this transforming, this shows also the power of the, the subjectivity. We can transform. The mind is much more powerful than anything.
Right.
Mind is limitless.
Right. In this context, I think most of the kind of the training is not to be kind of being wrong about things. For example, if I am in a jail cell, it would be wrong of me to imagine that I am in a cave. It is the emotional response to that prison that I want to modify, not the fact that I am in the prison. Right? So there's a difference, right? I'm not escaping kind of reality. I think there's a distinction that's very important to make. We are not trying to escape reality. We are trying to respond to it differently. Right? So when we see an angry person, we are not trying to deny that somebody is angry. We are saying that if he's angry, I'm not going to respond back with anger. Right? So it's more like our affective side that we are trying to work on, rather than denying that. I can't imagine an angry person. Oh no, he's a happy person. He's a friendly person, right? Because that would be denial of the fact out there. Right? So that's a distinction that I think as a practitioner we should make.
But I feel in this context, Krishna, what Nico said, if we take it to Geshe-la's those discrimination, feeling, intention. The discrimination, like thinking that a prison is a cave, because it recently struck me in Geshe-la's Bodhicitta that to change the feeling, actually how hard it is, like in the sense that if I was in a Chinese prison, how do I generate a pleasant feeling? So to change the discrimination would have to be key. Or even in your example, like if somebody is really shouting at me, to get a pleasant feeling.
It's hard.
So kind.
Permission, I actually have to generate a pleasant feeling. So I just want to put that out there. Do whatever it takes.
Finding somebody's shouting at me. I can practice patience. It's difficult.
And as Krishna saying, to change that feeling.
Yeah.
Because even if you intellectually accept that, okay, even if I see the angry person as my greatest long-term benefactor, but can I change the feeling? This is a good question.
Yeah, it's tough. First, discrimination.
And I didn't do anything, it's so unreasonable, and why are they so angry? But I think, if we change the discrimination, he's not angry at me, he's teaching me patience, then maybe we can change the feeling, no?
Maybe over.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult because we are so used to reacting.
Yeah, we are
conditioned
heavily in the opposite way.
Yeah.
True. Well, I thank everybody for a wonderful discussion. We are about time too, so I guess we'll do a dedication and I'll invite feedback, whatever we discussed. I hope I did a little bit of justice, but there is a lot to learn for all of us. Can I get that? Yeah.
I think more updated one. That's very to the wrong level than as a very question. This one is a bit more recent.
Yeah.
But just please don't read. Just keep this one.
So we'll do rededication. Please try to evoke the respective emotions and reflect on what we are dedicating. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas and the numberless sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of Vajrasattva, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state of Vajrasattva, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samanta Bhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Thank you everybody for joining us. I learned quite a lot, so thank you. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lokeshla. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please come back soon to Tushita, we need you.
Thank you.